We're bringing together the person harmed. We're bringing together the person responsible for that harm.
Stopping the school to prison pipeline, the San Diego program that's offering kids an alternative.
In San Diego, we have not relied on the cash bail system for at least a year, and we've seen that we are the safest urban county in America.
A new reality for California's bail industry, what this all means for San Diego, plus why voters may end up deciding its fate.
The marijuana industry is not about Cheech and Chong anymore. It's not about Woodstock. It's about Wall Street and Silicon Valley.
Trying to shake the stoner stereotype. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Ebony Monet. Caltrans faces a criminal complaint for allegedly taking sides on California's gas tax debate. Supporters of the gas tax repeal released this video today.
Is we're working with Caltrans? Yeah. So this is like a campaign thing for Caltrans?
I don't know, I guess. Yeah, they just told me to hand it out.
The group says the video shows Caltrans workers handing out No on Prop 6 flyers to drivers stopped at a roadblock in San Diego County. It's illegal for state employees to use public resources for any campaign activity. The group wants to block the gas tax increase signed by Governor Brown last year. They filed a criminal complaint with San Diego's DA office.
Quite frankly, I think it's a poor political choice for them as well. I think the backlash from this incident will be very severe. We understand that a number of the drivers were incensed that they were being forced to receive these campaign flyers, and many of them are very strong opponents of the increase in the gas tax.
Caltrans Director Lori Berman says her agency is investigating the incident. Time is running out for state lawmakers, but they still have a lot of work to do. The legislative session ends Friday. Over the next couple of days, members of the Assembly and Senate will be working extra hours to pass hundreds of bills. One of those is a Senate bill that addresses the rights of wildfire victims and utility companies during a fire emergency.
The biggest kahuna of all is the wildfire liability issue. That is the most lobbied bill, has the most political intrigue, and it's actually one that probably affects the most Californians because it'll affect every ratepayer in the state.
Utilities companies are fighting the bill. They say they should not be held liable for wildfires if they had been following safety laws. A City Heights group is keeping kids who commit crimes away from prosecution. KPBS reporter Taryn Minto says the program only serves a handful of San Diego neighborhoods, but there's hope to expand countywide.
Recent high school graduate Pamela Sareth is off to cosmetology school this fall. The 17-year-old says she's looking forward to following her love of nails, makeup, and hairstyling. But a few months ago, she might have been on a different path after a fight with her nephew's father.
And then for some odd reason, he was complaining about a car seat. So I got upset and he was like tugging and pulling on my nephew. So I hit him.
She could have faced criminal trouble, but instead she went through restorative community conferencing, or RCC. It brought Sareth and her nephew's father together so she could admit her mistake and they could work toward a resolution.
I got frustrated. I started crying, but there's always light at the end of the tunnel. So from there on out, it's okay, this is over with. I'm glad nothing had happened worse.
Sareth is one of 84 youth accused of certain crimes who completed the RCC program to avoid or clear charges. The City Heights-based nonprofit Mid-City Can spearheaded the initiative in 2014 to counter the school-to-prison pipeline, especially for Black and Hispanic youth. It created an RCC committee of law enforcement agencies, community members, and the National Conflict Resolution Center to identify cases for referral, such as theft, assault, or vandalism.
We're bringing together the person harmed. We're bringing together the person responsible for that harm.
That's Aramik Blake. She's a facilitator at the National Conflict Resolution Center. She says both sides must agree to the process before it can begin. And they meet with facilitators ahead of time so the victim feels supported and the offender can identify why they broke the law in the first place.
We'll bring in a supporter who potentially is in the field that they want to work in, who maybe can get them back on track. If it's a counselor or mental health, whatever is needed, we assess the situation, and that's who comes into that space.
After the facilitated meetings, the victims help craft an action plan for the youth. Blake describes her work with one program participant whose action plan focused on a passion for music at the victim's suggestion.
I have a cousin who owns a record label and was able to bring him to that. He recorded a song, like we literally have a song together, and that was part of his action plan.
Organizers say the program has been successful, and those who complete it are less often rearrested. But that's based on a limited number of participants. And restorative community conferencing doesn't work for everyone. Some youth don't accept responsibility, or the victim may prefer charges go forward. Right now, the program only applies to certain zip codes in City Heights, Barrio Logan, southeastern San Diego, Lemon Grove, and Spring Valley. But at a recent committee meeting, Lisa Weinrab from the district attorney's office said it could be beneficial for the rest of the county, too.
When I look at my cases now, I'm like, why can't we send this to restorative justice? Oh, wait a minute, is it in the zip code? Yeah. And a lot of them are not in the zip code, and there are many parts of this county that absolutely need this opportunity.
The committee agreed to explore which communities would be interested and to identify funding opportunities. A grant from the California Endowment supports the current program. District Attorney Summer Steffen wrote a letter supporting expansion. For 17-year-old Sareth, she says the restorative community conferencing left a lasting impact.
I would take out my anger on everybody like I used to, but now I don't bottle it up, but I talk it out instead of just yelling and saying all types of stuff that I don't mean.
Part of her action plan was to be a peer mentor for other youth going through the community conferencing process. She has since participated in other restorative justice opportunities, including a recent group discussion where youth and law enforcement were asked if they believe police brutality exists.
Yes, I believe it exists, only because we don't know how to communicate with one another.
Sareth begins school next month. Taryn Mento, KPBS News.
The Restorative Community Conferencing Program is funded by the California Endowment, which also supports City Heights coverage on KPBS. California's bail industry has launched a new fight against the state's new no-cash bail system. Bail industry groups are gathering signatures to place a new measure on the November ballot, asking voters to decide the fate of the measure. Earlier today, we spoke to San Diego District Attorney Summer Steffen about the new law. What's your reaction to this? Are you in agreement that the bail system needs reform?
The bail system is needed reform, and actually in San Diego we've been working on safe reforms to the bail system for the last year. So we feel that we've prepared ourselves. We're already using risk assessment tools that are fair and unbiased so that we're not judging somebody's ability to be in jail or not in jail based on how rich they are, but rather about what their conduct has been, what have they done, an objective criteria. So in San Diego, what people I think don't know is our statistics are completely different than the rest of the country in that we have less than 20% of individuals in our jail that are awaiting trial. The over 80% have already been convicted of a crime.
And talk to me about the assessment and what's the criteria for being released?
So a good validated assessment, it uses static criteria, meaning something that isn't based on somebody's socioeconomic status. It looks at failures to appear as a big category. So the two things it's supposed to test, are you going to appear for court and face justice? And the second big criteria, are you likely to commit a crime while out of custody? So those are the two basic criteria. It's what we use in San Diego and what is being proposed by this new law.
How will this new law, which goes into effect in October of next year, How will that change what's already happening here in San Diego?
Well, it is a big change. One of the big changes is that pretty much all misdemeanor crimes, except for domestic violence and a few others, will be released within 12 hours. So without bail and so that's a new phenomena that we have categories of crime we're concerned with, and we've written to the senators and they've promised us that they're going to continue to work on making these improvements. For example, misdemeanor sex offenders and DUIs with 2 priors still can be released within 12 hours. Other things that this law will do is it will place a huge burden on the DA's office, but it's a burden that I'm good with so long as we get the resources to do it, in that in all crimes where somebody is detained, serious and violent crimes, we have a new type of hearing, a detention hearing, where we have to file a motion and we have to show a judge with probable cause that they likely have committed this crime. So this will add to the responsibilities of notifying victims, making sure their voice is heard, filing the motions, and doing everything we can to protect public safety while following the law.
Now, the ACLU initially was a co-sponsor of this bill, and the ACLU pulled out, saying something along the lines that it gave too much discretion to the judges. What's your response to that argument?
I think that the law initially did not do a good job balancing victims' rights and offenders' rights and public safety. And the final version gets much closer to the right balance where everyone's rights are protected. And so I think it does a good job. It does have issues. It does have some areas of concern. And we're hoping to continue to work on amendments to fix those so that California can have the best system, one where you don't have a child predator out because they're rich when they should be in, and you have somebody with smaller drug offenses who's in, but there is a potential that they should be out in rehab or in other locations, and that would not risk public safety. There should be a better balance.
Summer Stephan, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
An effort to reduce the number of illegal pot grows in California is yielding big results. Capitol Public Radio's Ezra David Romero reports.
Operation Forest Watch began October 2017 and ends at the end of next month. So far, more than 70 people have been arrested at 95 grow sites. Around 640,000 plants and 25,000 pounds of processed marijuana were seized. USDA Forest Service Chief Forester Vicki Christensen says all 18 national forests in California have sustained damage from illegal pot grows.
We've seen an even greater increase in environmental effects on these public lands. Highly toxic chemicals used to grow the marijuana are killing and endangering our wildlife.
A quarter of a teaspoon of the toxic pesticide carbofuran found in many grow sites is so powerful it can kill a 300-pound bear. The chemical is said to be smuggled from Mexico by drug cartels. In Sacramento, I'm Ezra David Romero.
Recreational cannabis is a multi-billion-dollar industry that's beginning to bloom. AP reporter Krista Fourier explains why businesses want to see the stoner stereotype go up in smoke.
From pot-smoking hippies to spaced-out stoners, the lingering stereotypes of cannabis consumers.
You just think of it as being a dark alley, either really low-life, scummy people or just, brain-dead teens or something.
But with marijuana now legal in some form in 30 states across the country, the industry is fighting to change those perceptions. Los Angeles-based cannabis company MedMen recently launched Forget Stoner, a multi-million-dollar advertising campaign.
I think there's a huge untapped customer base. We're trying to, elevate that conversation to make it okay for us to talk about cannabis.
The company has plastered ads throughout LA to showcase ordinary and successful people who use cannabis.
We're seeing more marketers and advertisers who are starting to show this consumer more respect. They're starting to show this consumer more recognition of who they are in reality versus what that stereotype has been.
But not everyone wants to see the recreational use of cannabis normalized. Some worry that improving pot's image ignores its potential for harm. Studies have found that smoking pot may be linked to higher chances of traffic accidents, chronic bronchitis from long-term use, and schizophrenia, especially in the most frequent users.
The marijuana industry is not about Cheech and Chong anymore. It's not about Woodstock. It's about Wall Street and Silicon Valley. What the pot industry is doing now, it's exactly what big tobacco did 80 years ago. They're taking doctors, respected people in the community, business people, and they're saying that, look, we all use marijuana. You should too.
Cannabis advocates say increased legalization has created more acceptance toward marijuana among the general public. People like Cindy Paul, the 55-year-old insurance client manager, says she hasn't smoked pot in 25 years, but recently decided to try marijuana-infused gummies.
I do think it has medical qualities. I'm not using it for that. I'm using it to have a good time. I don't think it's any different than having a beer. So since we came to Oregon and it's legal here, that's why we're doing it here.
The industry hoping it can shake the stoner stereotype once and for all. Krista Fourier, Associated Press, Los Angeles.
Seasonal summer weather today, but things may heat up this weekend. Julia Wyden has more in tonight's forecast.
Good evening. We remain in a warmer than average pattern here across San Diego County. I'm meteorologist Julia Wyden, and as we look at satellite and radar imagery here, you don't see any showers popping up. You do see the occasional little bits of passing cloud cover, but overall we are in this very quiet weather pattern as high pressure builds off to the east. Now, with high pressure building in that direction, it's going to steer our wind out of the south, which means that we'll have more of that warmth in store for the next few days, with peak heating likely happening on Friday and Saturday. Meanwhile, farther off to the north, with more of that westerly onshore flow, coastal California through central and up into northern portions of the state will get more cloud cover to develop overnight, although I do think around here we'll be staying pretty clear. A look at your forecast for tonight in San Diego. We're coming down into the low 70s. Oceanside will be in the mid 60s. Chula Vista 67. Borrego Springs 75 degrees for tonight. And like I mentioned, clear skies tonight for the most part in the metro area, with your temperature dropping down to about 71. Into Thursday, heat will continue to build well off to the east and through our desert spots. Around here, it is going to be, again, just a few degrees above average for this time of year, with San Diego up to 82. I think we'll be in the upper 80s farther off to the north. Borrego Springs making it into the low triple digits. Your weekend forecast Saturday and Sunday. It's going to be quite warm around here, staying dry, but over into Arizona and New Mexico, there will be some spotty showers and thunderstorms due to that monsoonal moisture. Let's take a look at your 5-day forecast. 82 for Thursday at the coast, 83 for Friday, low 80s for the weekend. Over towards your inland spots, we'll climb up to as warm as low 90s for Friday and Saturday, with plenty of sunshine. Overnight lows cooling off to the low 60s. Mountainous areas, temps in the low 80s for the next several days, Friday and Saturday at 83. And in the deserts, we'll climb up to 108 for your Friday afternoon. Could get some strong thunderstorms to move through on Sunday. Back to you, Ebony.
A hydrogen truck accident prompted the evacuations of several businesses and schools in El Cajon. Firefighters responded to the incident around 8 this morning. They found hydrogen vapors leaking from the truck. The area was blocked off for hours. Around 150 students at Idea Center High School, Chaparral High, and Merritt Academy were evacuated to the gym at Grossmont High. Some students told 10 News they heard a loud boom.
This morning, I just heard a big boom. Like, I didn't know. We were all chilling at school, and then, like, the floor, like, shook a little bit, and then, like, we didn't know what it was about.
It was kind of scary.
You don't expect to hear something like that at school?
No, you don't. It's like a one-in-a-life thing, kind of, but, like, it doesn't always happen. So it was kind of, it freaked me out.
No injuries were reported. Investigators are trying to figure out what caused the fire and explosion. The largest wildfire in California history is almost fully contained. The Mendocino Complex fire has burned more than 410,000 acres so far. Strike teams from around the state have helped with the firefight. KQED producer Suki Lewis and Annie Werikoff embedded with the CAL FIRE strike team. They introduced us to a CAL FIRE captain on the front lines.
It was pretty intense when we got here. And we weren't even at the head of the fire. I mean, they couldn't even put anybody out in front of it because it was just dangerous. The winds are extremely squirrely here. We have a northwest and then we have a west. It's going to switch to a southwest. So the winds in this area could be doing one thing 1 minute and completely different in another. So we have a drip torch, half diesel, and then a quarter of gasoline. Try to find a receptive fuel bed. If you're in grass, you can just fire right on the edge. What we would want to do is, the winds are favorable to us to create a backing fire. So we would catch the fire's edge and burn this island out. We'd start at the top and you fire both of the fire edges and let it back so that it runs out of fuel. I don't think that people honestly understand wildland fires until they have it in their backyard, how destructive it is, how fast it can move, the flame lengths, the heat coming from it. It's pretty frightening. I don't think people are aware of that. And then the other thing is just how long we are away from our families. I don't think anybody really realizes. I mean, some of these guys have been going since June 22nd with a couple days off. It's a long time to be away from your loved ones.
KQED shared a snapshot of a day in the life of this strike team. You can see more of those photos and audio clips at kqed.org. You may have seen the Apple Watch send text messages and the Fitbit count steps. Now a new wristband can measure your cells. From NJTV News, reporter Michael Hill explains why this could save patients trips to the lab.
At the moment, we just call it a wearable impedance cytometer, but maybe we should come up with a more catchy name.
Electrical engineering professor Mehdi Javimar chuckles at the technical name, but the cytometer, a device that measures cell properties, might have some serious implications and applications, from routine screenings and blood drawing to emergency medicine.
So imagine somebody is in a car accident, they get rushed to the emergency room, and the medical professionals want to know if this person is undergoing internal bleeding or not. They can do a quick pinprick from their finger, do a complete blood cell count with this type of device, and make a quick assessment there as to what the next step would be.
Javimar says that process typically takes an hour or two for results. In cases of chronic diseases, a day or two. Professor Javimar says this cytometer has applications beyond medical. Consider the environmental ones as well.
You want to open up a door and you want to check the doorknob first to see how clean it is, whether there's E. coli bacteria or not. You go to a restaurant, you want to eat a salad, you want to know whether the lettuce has salmonella or E. coli on it. You do take a quick swab of your lettuce, you test it on your wristband, and you say, yes, okay, this is safe to eat.
Now, Professor, you know that would be awful for hypochondriacs.
Yes, that's true.
Javimar says for more than a decade, his lab has been working on building miniature devices to monitor what we have in our blood, saliva, and other bodily fluids. He says this small device can do what big, bulky machines do.
A microfluidic channel inside of it, essentially what that is like a really small pipe that's thinner than the diameter of a human hair.
With the advent of Fitbits and smartwatches, he says the lab saw an opportunity to create this cytometer on a circuit board with batteries, Bluetooth, and other technology.
What it does is it takes these really small signals of these cells passing by one, it processes that data, it converts it to digital data, and then it wirelessly transmits that to a smartphone. And then the smartphone processes the data and it essentially displays it for the user to know what their cell count is.
The professor says the university is working on a patent, while feedback has been encouraging from biotech colleagues after a study about this device was published in the scientific journal Nature about how this resembles popular smart devices, but with huge applications for telemedicine.
So we are also trying to piggyback on that computing power to essentially essentially bypass the need for these large servers and computers.
The professor says the invention is quite a ways from being available on the market. From now to then, it will need clinical trials, FDA approval, and development so it perhaps looks less space age. In Piscataway, Michael Hill, NJTV News.
It's been 2 years since a developer purchased the historic Truax House, which was San Diego's first AIDS hospice. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen has an update on the plan to reuse it.
So welcome to the Truax House.
Sohail Nakshab is showing me around the construction site for his restoration of the Truax House.
Original windows will be fully restored.
The home in Bankers Hill was built in 1912. In the 1980s, it became a safe haven and hospice for people dying of AIDS. It fell into disrepair over the years, but historic preservationists were relieved when Nakshab agreed to buy it and preserve it. He's converting the home into 10 studio apartments.
This one, the idea is like you put your bed here, so when you're laying down, you capture the view of the airport and harbor.
And building new apartments and townhomes next door.
Our goal was, let's create some sort of workforce housing for all demographics to be able to afford and live and enjoy this neighborhood.
Nakshab says the ground floor will become a community meeting center with a plaque honoring Dr. Brad Truax, a pioneering AIDS activist after whom the house was named.
We'll end up building custom cubbies of storage.
He expects the apartments to be open early next year. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
Thank you for joining us. Have a great night.